Nigeria ratifies accession to the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement.
National Digital Innovation and Entrepreneurship Center to be established in Abuja to create more jobs.
Remains of first civilian governor of Old Kaduna State, Malam Abdulkadri Balarabe Musa, laid to rest.
On Good Morning Nigeria today, our focus is on the recent NSAS and political engagements, matters arising from that.
Now, in the wake of the #NSAS protests, cabinet ministers of the Federal Republic were directed to meet with stakeholders in their various states, that's to say constituencies, to explain government's efforts at meeting the demands of the youth arising from the protests.
And recall that the protesters had demanded the immediate release of all arrested protesters, as well as justice for all deceased victims of police brutality and appropriate compensations for their families.
Now, they also asked for the setting up of an independent body to oversee the investigation and prosecution of reported police misconduct within a period of 10 days, as well as psychological evaluation and retraining of disbanded SARS operatives before they could be redeployed. Now, the protesters further asked for an increase in the welfare package of members of the police force.
And so far, the notorious SARS unit has been disbanded, and its officers have undergone debriefing and psychological examinations. Judicial panels, that is, of inquiry have begun work in 26 states and the FCT to address concerns raised by victims of SARS.
Now, the directive by President Muhammadu Buhari to ministers to return to their states for consultation was expected to garner support from all key players, including political, traditional, religious, and community leaders, in order to address acts or issues or even rumors that could foster disunity and further throw the country into a crisis.
The ministers and some political, stalwarts who are given a week to submit their reports began these consultations, with many scheduling rather town hall meetings as well as other fora to fulfill the mandate. Though some have asked if the politicians have many dealings with their communities, since they are not elected representatives of the people. Others insist the presidential directive is well-timed.
Well, Special Advisor to the President on Media and Publicity, that's Mr. Femi Adesina, indicated that the directive was issued during the Federal Executive Council meeting, and that the requirement was for the ministers to, after the consultation, submit their reports thereafter to, as I said, the Secretary to the Government of the Federation.
And these reports are to help establish the true circumstances surrounding the end-SARS protests in Nigeria. The presidential directive for ministerial constituency engagement is our focus today, and our guest will give us insight into this visit. Welcome to Good Morning Nigeria. I am Yusuf Nadabo Usman.
And I'm Kingsley Osadolo. I join my colleague Nadabo to also welcome you to the program. And as always, we're here in our Abuja headquarters studios and reaching you live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We have our supplementary segments. These include business and newspaper review. In the meantime, let's get the highlights of the morning news. And welcome back Musbah Udan Wahab, our colleague who's been away for a while, enjoying his vacation. Musbah, delight to have you back.
Yeah, you can say that again, Kingsley. It's good to be back here. And good morning. Yusuf, how are you? Good to see you too.
Thank you.
All right, let's take the news. The Federal Executive Council has formally approved the ratification of the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement signed by Nigeria in July last year. The Minister of Information and Culture, Lai Mohammed, announced these while briefing journalists after the partial online meeting of the council presided over by President Muhammadu Buhari.
The effective date ought to have been July 2020, but as a result of the pandemic, it was postponed to the 1st of January 2021, and all member states were given up to the 5th of December to ratify the agreement.
A National Digital Innovation and Entrepreneurship Center is to be established in Abuja, the nation's capital, as part of efforts by the federal government towards enhancing job creation. The Minister of Communications and Digital Economy, Issa Ali Pantami, announced this at a briefing after the meeting of the Federal Executive Council.
Millions of our citizens are going to be trained as entrepreneurs, particularly in ICT, so that they will be future potential employers rather than potential employees. And this center is going to be managed by the National Information Technology Development Agency, NITDA.
And to the National Assembly, where the Senate Committee on Nigerian Army says it is important for Nigerians to understand that the Army lost its equipment fighting insurgents and other criminals, which must be replaced if the country is to remain secure. Chairman of the committee, Ali Hundume, who said these are the 2021 budget defense of the Nigerian Army, said he is fully convinced of this after the committee's oversight to army formations in some parts of the country.
Advocating that they should be front-loaded. That is to say, if you are giving budget, if you sign the budget, you give the money to them so that they can start their procurement process, because unlike others, that local procurement that you can buy here, buy there, Nigerian Army requirements have to be processed.
In terms of ensuring that we bring security closer to the people, we have established a number of bases.
Away from that, Governor of Cross River State, Ben Ayade, promises to assist NTA Calabar to enable the station resume transmission in less than 6 weeks. The governor, who disclosed this during a visit by the Director General, Nigerian Television Authority, Yakubu Ibn Mohammed, supported the return of NTA Calabar with 10 million naira.
It's located in the Cross River State capital, essentially to serve the government and people of Cross River State. To that extent, it is the property of the government.
People of Cross River State will work with your team on the ground after putting this money on ground to ensure that NTA beams past in the next 6 weeks.
To some electoral matters, the appreciable level of peace experienced in the Edo and Ondo state governorship elections is largely attributable to the role played by the media. Acting chairman of the INEC, Ahmed Muazu, stated this in a meeting with the media in Abuja.
The Edo and Ondo elections, the Commission must place on record, among other things, the tireless and sustained campaign by the media against electoral violence. The media not only kept the imperative of peaceful elections in the front burner, it also kept the spotlight on all political parties.
INEC must at all times ensure that the votes of the people continue to count during elections.
The remains of the former governor of Old Kaduna State, Malam Balarabe Musa, have been laid to rest. The elder statesman, who died on Wednesday, was 84. Musa was elected governor of Kaduna State in 1979 on the platform of the People's Redemption Party, PRP, a party founded by Malam Aminu Kano. Balarabe Musa is survived by a wife and 10 children. President Muhammadu Buhari is sending his condolences to government and people of the Republic of Mali over the passing of former President Amadou Toumani Touré. The president commiserates with families of the departed Malian leader whose 10-year reign in the country contributed to the strengthening of political institutions and measure of stability, starting with his presiding over a peaceful transition in the country as a military leader. President Buhari joins world leaders, particularly those from ECOWAS, in mourning the former president whose wisdom and foresight also impacted greatly on the West Coast, as he always advocated dialogue over conflict and believed strongly in the African voice. And that concludes the morning news highlights. Thanks a lot for being part of it. Good morning, Nigeria. And matters arising from the recent ministerial engagement and other political stalwarts will be talked about and discussed after this time out with Yusuf and Kingsley. We'll be back shortly.
A scorecard like no other. Government has put in place measures and initiatives principally targeted at youths, women, and the most vulnerable groups in our society. These included broad plan to lift 100 million Nigerians out of poverty in the next 10 years. The creation of 75 billion naira National Youth Investment Fund to provide opportunities for the youths, and the Micro, Small and Medium Enterprises Survivor Fund, through which government is A. Paying 3-month salaries of the staff of 100,000 micro, small and medium enterprises. B. Paying for the registration of 250,000 businesses at the Corporate Affairs Commission. C. Giving a grant of 30,000 naira to 100,000 artisans and guaranteeing market for the product of traders. These are in addition to many other initiatives such as farmer money, trader money, market money, N-Power, N-Tech, and N-Agro. These and more in spite of a recession and a global pandemic.
Do you know that social media is not good or bad, and that it is you who is using it that is either good or bad? Bad social media users spread rumors and fake news without verification. But good social media users stop, verify the information, and reflect before sharing it. Now, are you a good social media user? Stop the spread of fake news. Verify the authenticity of your source for a better Nigeria.
This message is from the National Orientation Agency. The Council of Our Fathers.
My advice to these young people is please do not take us back to those harrowing days. You probably do not know what it is.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation together.
You're watching Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you from Nigerian Television Authority, the NTA. One of our complimentary segments is business. Kunle Adie is standing by with that.
The transport sector has always been described as pivotal to economic growth, not only at local but international level. Nigeria is endowed with numerous natural resources. Harnessing them optimally has been centered on an effective transportation system. An urban development expert, Abimbola Onibokun, said an effective transport system is an indicator to economic emancipation.
We have the rail, the water, going by land, we have air. And Nigeria is blessed with all this, with the resources to develop each of these modes into an efficient system. If you develop dry ports in Nigeria, you are linking internal production centers and agri centers to European and other developing countries. And the drive port can only work if transport network subsystems are integrated. You integrate both water, road, rail for efficiency.
He implored the government to commit more resources to the sector. And now it's time to see what transpired on the floor of the Nigerian Stock Exchange on Wednesday, November 11, 2020. With business news, I'm Kunle Adeyeye.
Many thanks, Kunle, for the business package. Coming up next is Newspaper Review.
As usual, Bayo Tuyebi is here with us to review the newspapers for us. Good morning, Bayo.
Thank you, Yusuf. Good morning. Good morning, Kinsley. Good morning, Nigeria.
Right, Bayo, good to see you.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's take a look at the front page of the Nation newspaper, which is one of the papers that we have this morning. And above the nameplate says UNILAG, that's University of Lagos, welcomes VC's return. And panel chair protests. That's the writer to that headline. Details on page 6. UNILAG welcomes VC's return. Panel chair protests. NCDC, why yellow fever is spreading. Ondo and others begin vaccination. Harsh and SARS, Bandire, Utomi, Falono, and others slam federal government for what they describe as dictatorship. That's on page 8. And below the nameplate says Lalong and Sule present budgets. Lalong is governor of Plateau, Sule that of neighboring Nasarawa. Details on page 28. Activists under fire for suing Davido and others. That's also on page 28. ASU can't claim varsity autonomy, says federal government, with the rider now threatens protest over strike. Now, the story on ASU not being in the position to claim varsity autonomy was attributed to the Minister of Labour and Employment, that's Senator Chris Ngige, and he spoke while defending his ministry's budget before the Senate Committee on Labour and Employment. He said autonomy can only work when a university generates its resources to pay its workers and meet its obligations. Lead story. Row over panel to dispose of recovered government assets. Senior lawyers and rights activists, AGF, that's Attorney General of the Federation, lacks power to set up committee. That story is on the front page with a jump to page 5. Tributes as Balarabe Musa is buried. Ex-governor dies at 84. Buhari, Tinubu eulogize him. And you can see the photograph of his funeral there yesterday in Kaduna. Trump files new election suits. That's page 29. And EU orders 300 million doses of Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine. Honorable.
Okay, Kinsley, on Daily Trust today, we have right under the masthead, one killed, several abducted on Kaduna-Abuja highway. Get details of that story on page 35. An Ogun teacher kidnaps people, demands 200,000 ransom, page 37. That sounds odd.
Yes, it's very strange.
And on page 18, private sector can access 2 billion naira in new agri fund. The lead story is Ndume, IDPs and others stop the radicalization of Boko Haram members. And the writers are, arrest those funding terrorists, says Senate Committee. Heal our wounds first, Borno residents. They should not be released until end of war. And Army declares Shekau al-Barnawi and 6 others wanted. Details of this big story is on page 5. Still a very nice impression there, artistic impression of late Abdulkadir Balarabe Musa, who survived 1936 to 2020. He died yesterday. And there are, tributes here, very beautiful ones from the president and former President Obasanjo. President Buhari says he reflected, that is, Abdulkadir Balarabe Musa reflected the passion and vigor that heralded Nigeria's independence, which steadily translated into activism for a return to democracy at the height of military interregnum. Obasanjo said Balarabe Musa brought renewed activism, verve, and resourcefulness to bear on the nation's polity. Get the details of this on page 4. Bayo?
Yes, indeed. Our hearts go out to the family of Alhaji Abdulkadir Balarabe Musa, who died and was buried yesterday. Among the tributes are some of the ones you have read now from the president, and the governor of Kaduna State also, Nasir El-Rufai, has said he will be remembered as a progressive politician who tried to expand the horizon of opportunity for the ordinary people. Despite the setback of his unwarranted impeachment, Balarabe Musa, as a private citizen, projected the qualities of principled politics, decency, integrity, and commitment to the cause of our talakawas. Abdulkadir Balarabe Musa was elected governor of the old Kaduna State, comprising the current Kaduna State and Katsina State in 1979. However, he was impeached on 23rd of June 1981, solely for one reason. He had proposed small-scale medium industries, one in each of the 17 local governments of the then Kaduna province and 17 in the Katsina province. But however, because he didn't obtain approval of the Kaduna State House of Assembly, he was impeached. Earlier, he had sent his cabinet to the Kaduna State House Assembly because it was all PRP members from all the 34 local governments of the state, and it didn't include any of the MPN. It was not approved. One of his qualities was that, being an accountant, he was very meticulous. I recall that there was a World Bank water project that was awarded to Kaduna State, and he declined it. He said, how can you give us a loan? We are paying. You are now giving us the consultants, the experts, we are to pay them, and all the machinery, we are going to buy everything from you. You are giving us a loan with one hand and taking everything away with the right hand. He declined completely. Well, he will be remembered for his position, sometimes which he became a victim of. He was of the People's Redemption Party under Malam Aminu Kano. But he and Abubakar Rimi had their own brand of PRP, and they formed a faction out of that of Malam Aminu Kano. Eventually, they joined the Unity Party of Nigeria and Great Nigeria People's Party to form the People's Progressive Party. At the end of the day, even Rimi too, all of them lost out in the radicalism. But he will be renowned for his steadfastness in being principled and a man of integrity. Our heart goes out to his family.
Sure.
Yeah, Bayo, thanks a lot for the perspective you provided on the late Balarabe Musa. I was just wondering, yes, the political issue had to do with the citing of the small-scale industries, but the reason for the impeachment, that's to say the transgression of the provision of the Constitution, was that he had run his government without recourse to the constitutional provision that, namely, you should have a cabinet, even though the State House of Assembly had frustrated his moves to have a cabinet. Not that, he didn't cite industry or the issues over the industry. That was in the background. But the constitutional transgression was that he had no cabinet, and therefore it was an impeachable offense. And he was the first to have been impeached in the Second Republic, yes, and therefore in the history of various republics, because we had no impeachment during the First Republic, by the way. Of course, that being a parliamentary system of government, a vote of no confidence could lead to a dissolution of government, or, as happened in the southwestern region, as it was called at the time, once there was a state of emergency, then whoever was the premier of the region had to step down.
Well, the issue of the cabinet was only a facade, because I recall very well, I was then a young reporter in Kaduna, and I followed that story very closely. The main grounds was, yes, the cabinet he couldn't form. He has sent the cabinet list, but because it didn't include MPN members, they were reluctant to approve of it. So it became a kind of subterfuge. But critically, the grounds was on citing semi-scale industries across all the local government without the required constitutional approval by the State House of Assembly. But be that as it may, at the end, when the coup of 1983 came, and later on many governors were rounded up, Balarabe Musa was one of those who were found with a clean bill of health as far as corruption was concerned.
That was his steadfastness in trying to stand by his principles. And as you said, he has a background of being an accountant and very meticulous with funds and the rest of them. So you shouldn't expect less. And given his political standing on issues, he couldn't have done much less than that, really.
And more importantly, Bayo, this needs to be stressed for the younger generation. He was not an extravagant person.
No.
He lived a simple life.
Yes,
very Spartan life. I recall being at his Cardinal residence sometime in 1986. We did a magazine cover story at the time, and his gates were flung open. You walk in and walk out. You could say that Nigeria was much safer at the time, but it was easily accessible.
Ever accessible.
Easily accessible. So,
I think the Kaduna State government will do him a big favor by using that house and converting it to a Balarabe Musa kind of museum. And those
library.
Library. Those kind of ideas that he stood for should be put together and put in that place so that at least those ideals he stood for will not be lost to history.
The representative of the governor yesterday at the burial said so. He said Kaduna State government is going to do something about him to immortalize him and get him rather, put on the pages of history in Kaduna State, really. He has done that much.
Sorry, Nadabo, you read one curious story a while ago from David Trust about a teacher kidnapping. Is that a psychological or a psychiatric problem? I mean, it looks a bit unusual.
Yeah, the mother reported to the police that they can't find the son, and when they traced it, they found the son had been kidnapped by the teacher, one Habib, and actually had called and was demanding a ransom of 200,000. And the police were able to track him and arrest him. It's sad. A teacher is supposed to be a surrogate parent.
But it's still really sane and mentally sound with the teacher?
Yeah, that's the issue.
That's the issue because he's a student.
To examine him.
And look at the paltry he's looking for.
Parentis and he's kidnapping. Well, how many people are in the class? So if he kidnaps all of them, you would imagine how much he will be demanding.
And above all, he's going to be out of job because there's going to be nobody to teach.
Absolutely, absolutely. There's another curious story, this time at the tertiary level. You know, University of Lagos had this crisis in its governing council. The vice-chancellor was said to have been fired. And then, of course, the federal government then set up a visitation panel, a special visitation panel. The report of the panel has since been submitted. The federal government has, as a visitor, that's the president, Muhammadu Buhari, has issued, of course, his approval to the recommendations. That's why the headline here says on the front page of the Nation newspaper, UNILAG welcomes Vice-Chancellor's return. The Vice-Chancellor has been reinstated. The then chairman of the governing council is said to say, fine. He has also stepped on his own. He earlier stepped, resigned. He quit the position, and then Dr. John Momo was placed in an acting position as chairman. I said now the governing council has been dissolved. Now, the curiosity is that the chairman of the special visitation panel, Professor Saad from Ahmadu Bello University, says that he regrets signing the final report of the visitation panel. I read this online yesterday, and part of it here, let me just take this out. It says he wrote two letters, one to the Chief of Staff to the President, and then, of course, the other, it's also sent to the Honorable Minister of Education. In essence, it says, as chairman, I didn't want to sign the final report, but I felt that would be a slap on the face of the government and it would generate so much bad publicity in the public domain that I would rather sign on the understanding that the matter would be referred to the Shehu of Borno as Chancellor. As it stands now, I feel I was made a fool of and stabbed in the back by people I trusted. Furthermore, it would be impossible for any council to manage a university in this country if the recommendations of the panel are implemented in a white paper.
I think the outcome here is that the chairman of the special visitation panel is not in agreement with the outcome. he actually said that, yes, there were instances that the Vice Chancellor as the return was indicted. However, I think his own recommendation is that the Chancellor of the University, the Shehu of Borno, the issue should have been referred to him. But what has the President, the visitor has directed now is to reinstate the Vice Chancellor because due process was not followed. The council has been dissolved, but there is now going to be referred to the regular visitation panel to look over the case again. So I think it's balancing act between the report that was sent in by the special visitation panel and the decision that was taken by the Federal Ministry of Education.
No, mine is just with the procedure. Right?
Yes.
Okay.
If you don't agree with a report, why endorse it? You were in a position to prepare your own minority report and attach the minority report to the main report, and your signature column will be vacant. So why endorse it and then come around later to write a supplementary letter to the Chief of Staff to say, oh, look, I'm not in agreement with this report, but I have endorsed it or I've signed. Once you signed, you were bound by the contents of that particular report.
You accept the report. That's
absolutely. That's what it means. That's what I say. If you disagree, I mean, we have found instances in the past where a person would disagree or persons would disagree with the committee's report and they will prepare their own minority report. And therefore, the recipient, the ultimate authority who receives the report, will have the benefit of considering the contents of both the final report of the full committee and that of the minority committee and be guided accordingly. That's why I said it's a bit strange.
It's strange, really, very much strange.
Well, Governor Obaseki and Philip Shaibu are to be inaugurated for their second term today. It will be held at the Ogbe Stadium. It is also limited to about 700 guests. This is determined by the COVID-19 atmosphere. But the citizens of Edo State will be able to follow virtually the development. Also in the U.S., the state of Georgia is to conduct what has been described as a manual election because the margin of the votes between Joe Biden and Donald Trump is about 411,000, which is within the range of 0.5% or less.
Did you say manual election or manual recount?
Manual recount.
Recount, really.
Okay.
Manual recount.
Recount,
yes.
Yes. All right. Then, of course, it's still going on. The drama is still playing out. Trump is not conceding, and Joe Biden says, look, I don't need to go to court to compel him to cooperate with me in the lead up to the transition, that's to say January 20th. So that's a bit of what happens in developing or emerging democracies that we are seeing there. You have one seat-tight incumbent who is facing ejection, almost compulsory constitutional ejection by the winner of the election.
No, you see, there's a General Service Administration Office that handles the transition. It's supposed to provide about $9.9 million for the transitional arrangement. But that office says that, as far as it's concerned, it has not recognized a winner. All that has been declared so far has been tagged as media declaration.
Fine.
But the General Service Office seems to have been taking instructions from the president. And they all belong to the Republican Party, and of course he should know that they would not take this from Biden.
But the General Service Office did cite example that in the year 2000 they had to wait for Supreme Court to rule before they started the transition process.
When the winner gets to be sworn in on the 20th of January and the incumbent by noon of that same day is no longer president, you will hear about firings from that section of the administration.
No, even before that day.
No, I'm just talking about the firings. Okay. There's nothing, yes.
Lots of heads are going to roll.
But somebody has to be in charge.
Yes, but
the person being in charge is the president.
By December 20th,
yes,
all the electoral votes, colleges votes will be declared, so there will be no dispute again.
No, we will see, but there are a few persons who have taken the kind of steps they have taken, and there will be consequences.
Well, thank you so much, Bayo. It's a pleasure. We've been here this morning. Hope to see you again tomorrow.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. You're watching Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you from the Nigerian Television Authority. We shall now take a break before we continue.
The Council of Our Fathers.
I will urge and advise our younger generation to use talent and brain to sort out problems, not arms.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation together.
These days, people get their news and information from more media sources than ever before. Some of the news and information given are fake, unverified, doctored, and manufactured to create confusion, stir disaffection, and cause disunity. Before you believe or share any news, ask yourself, is this real? Is it from a credible source? Is it verified or verifiable? Fake news is dangerous, whether you do it for fun or for political gains. Real people can get hurt. Fake news, don't create it, don't spread it.
This is a public service announcement from NTA.
Advertising your goods and services on the right channel gives you an edge over your competitors. NTA News 24 has all the platforms for your target audience. The station is on DSTV channel 419, GoTV channel 46, StarTimes channel 101, and Free TV channel 703. With our digital format and wide range, we can reach your customers in next to no time. We are eager to promote your business, goods, and services. So, partner with us for a very rewarding business experience. For more information, please call Henry on 0803-379-0884 or visit our office at NTA Headquarters, Area 11, Garki, Abuja. NTA News 24. News and more news.
All right, you're watching Good Morning Nigeria, and we are live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. As a prompt for our conversation this morning, let's listen into this background that put together by our correspondent.
Since the NSAS protest, issues surrounding youth and youth restiveness have continued to resonate at different fora as part of measure targeted at addressing tensions created by NSAS protest. President Muhammadu Buhari mandated ministers to visit their constituencies for engagement with their communities. The directive came at the Federal Executive Council meeting of 21st October 2020. The ministerial engagement will enable stakeholders in communities across the country understand federal government's effort at meeting the demands of NSAS protesters, who are mostly youth. It will also enable the ministers to solicit support of political and traditional rulers in dispelling any rumors that could generate disunity among Nigerians and cause crisis in the country. What will be the likely outcome of these engagements? What were some of the issues raised by the constituents? What impact will it make? How will government use this assessment for the benefit of youth? These and more will be answered shortly by our guest on Good Morning Nigeria.
Many thanks, Aisha, for that background. It's Good Morning Nigeria. We're talking about the answers and, of course, some political engagements at constituency level by politicians and those concerned in this very, issue. I guess tonight we have, first and foremost, in the studio here.
Our guest tonight.
Sorry about that. I guess this morning, I guess. Haven't been working all night, that's the issue.
I know, that's right. Stuff happens.
Sorry about that. Please bear with us. Our guest this morning, and the most important one we have is the Senior Special Assistant to the President on Niger Delta Affairs, Ita. We thank you so much, sir, for coming.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Nigeria.
Thank you very much.
Okay, distinguished Senator Ita, of course, you understand what's happening. All right, you were part of the engagement team with constituents in Akwa Ibom, in this case, taking the entire state as a constituency. What was your experience?
We were in Akwa Ibom at the directive of Mr. President that since Nigerians have some concerns about the policies of government and there were this protest, that we shouldn't ignore them. We should go to the grassroots get their mouth nearer to our ears and hear exactly what is their complaint, and then address it to the extent that we can give explanations and then bring report back as to what we recommend should be done. So we went with my brother, the Honorable Minister of Niger Delta Affairs, Senator Godswill Akpabio, and other federal government appointees. We had interaction with the people, and we heard them. We heard them in cells. What I call cells is that in different groups. We heard the women group, we heard the youth, we heard the elders, we heard the students, we heard even a group of lecturers, in state institutions, in federal institutions, and their concerns were simply that it is not just SARS that they are protesting against, that they have some issues relating to some social issues, like relating to employment and a few other ones. And we addressed it to the extent we could. We answered their questions. We put ourselves to question and answer session with them. And the press, the media also asked questions, and we answered all we knew. And to the glory of God, they were very satisfied as to the questions they asked. But they still said there were many things that needed to be done. And they told us what needed to be done more, and that's what we brought back as a report.
Fine. In terms of the response of the participants, were these no-holds-barred interaction, or persons who participated in those sessions said, all right, so let's say what is limited, or it might just be cynical to say, look, nothing might come out of this. What did you grasp in terms of the enthusiasm or the lack of it, assuming there was any, from these sessions?
Well, they came out with enthusiasm to ask questions. They came out with enthusiasm to seek answers. They came out with enthusiasm to seek solutions to all they were concerned about. They were actually concerned that at that time, first, that the protest had progressed beyond what was anticipated. That is, those who genuinely needed reforms one way or the other, had progressed up to a situation where others overtook it and got into stealing properties, damaging public facilities, getting into even private shops and looting. They were concerned about that. And so they said, whatever it is, we should ensure that those persons who were injured one way or the other were accommodated, and that the law should accommodate those who have made and had losses.
Senator, given the scenario on the ground and looking at what you've gone through the constituents, if I may ask this, was there that feeling that you are going to meet a lot of enthusiasm from the people? And if it were, how great was the feeling within them? Just like Kingsley asked, the people are very much, tensed up before you reach them.
Yeah.
And you went there with that purpose of trying to dose the tension and then see what can be done about their own plight. But truly speaking, they had real causes to be tensed up, as you mentioned. Yeah. And they will want to see something coming out of your visit. Did they take away anything?
Well, we made commitments. One, that we are taking their concerns back to His Excellency Mr. President and the Federal Executive Council. And there were also matters which concerned the responses of the state government. Don't forget, much of the protest is not only about actions relating to the federal government. There were actions relating to, or which could be addressed by the state government. Some could be addressed by the federal government. We also made sure that these issues were disaggregated and we reached out to the appropriate authorities on this, on those other matters of that segment. But I must say that we did not leave the place with a consensus or with an ovation from the people. We did not leave with an ovation from the people. We left with a sense of concern. We left with a sense, you are our children. Don't deceive us. If you don't deceive us by telling us what will not be done. And when you go back, make sure that the thing that you say that the federal government will do, let's do it. And also, the state government also did their own part of addressing the people and addressing their concerns. The local government also, also did it addressing, because everybody agrees that it is not a matter that affects only the federal government. It is federal, local, and state. And as much as possible, we can say, and I will repeat again, we did not go there to meet an ovation. We did not leave the place with an ovation, but we left the place with a sense of that government, the federal government, has shown responsiveness and responsibility to the citizens that it is working for. And they have not sat in Abuja and said, don't mind them. That the president, through his representatives, has come down to say, what are your concerns? This is what I have done. This is what I am doing more. That's what we took back, but we did not take back ovation.
I mean, well, all of us in the studios here, we're not spring chicken, as it were. But I'm just trying to fetch out from my memory, or indeed from what one had read in the past, whether we have had this kind of interaction in our history. I do know that, of course, in times of crisis in the past, there were meetings of leaders of thought. Yeah. These were usually hand-picked persons or self-appointed persons who would go for the interaction. But going from the level of explanation provided by distinguished Senator Ita Enang with regard to the levels of interaction and the various groups that they interacted with, and the genuine outpouring of concern and views, as he said, look, they didn't leave the venues with an ovation, but led with a message and also a mandate to be sure that things will get back. Well, Senator, we'll come back to you to drill into this, because it looks like we're getting into a more effective feedback mechanism from the government to those who are in charge of our affairs. We have two other guests who are with us. They are usually our regulars on Good Morning Nigeria. We'd like to welcome Ibrahim Modibo. Ibrahim Modibo, of course, you do know him as a publisher of a magazine and also a doctoral candidate in the meantime. He's a communicator. Ibrahim Modibo, delighted to have you with us on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you very much. I'm delighted to be here this morning.
All right. Also here with us is a financial analyst. That's Niya Kinsiju, always dealing with economic matters. But this morning, we are going to engage him on the management of the political economy. Because Niya, as you very well know, all the numbers you talk about, those numbers were in tatters as a result of the harsh NSAS protest. Yeah. Take Lagos, for instance, and then look at the disruptions that have occurred. And here we are having a political response to some of the cardinal issues embedded in those harsh NSAS protests. What are your thoughts?
Well, I actually want to take it from the communication point of view, because the truth is that this is actually a communication engagement, which also is the foundation of dialogue and, of course, negotiation. Whatever the figures may be in the world of finance, economy, and investment, the direction for development is always pivoted on communication. So we had communication, where the appropriate communication is not availed. You also have deficiencies, in those other sectors and segments of our national life. I first want to commend whoever, whoever brought that, and of course the president's conscientiousness in adopting this form of communication. This, to me, is the trust of what we call development communication, as different from what we have always experienced. As you noted, where people, in the aftermath of a crisis, people will be selected. in the minds and consciousness of the leaders at that time as the relevant stakeholders at that point in time, and usually invited to Abuja, you know. That's what we call the top-down, you know, approach. But where you now send out delegations from the federal government to states and local governments, it means what the government is trying to do is to touch base with the people. Though it may not be the perfect model of bottom-up communication, but the truth is that the government had now, you know, removed the toga of authority to come down and touch base with the people at the grassroots, and most importantly, gather feedback, you know, to the government. And as the distinguished senator noted, it's not about festivity. It's not about drum beating and all that. It's to aggregate the feelings, the emotions, sentiments at that level, and in the most objective manner, present it back to the federal government. What I'm impressed with is the insistence by the president that each minister must write a report of that engagement, and not just only write report, and I think it would also be presented at FEC. So which means those concerns are also being treated at the highest possible level, you know, of the political hierarchy. So it also talks to the fact that the citizens are actually being treated as significant beings in the political milieu in Nigeria now. I think going forward, this should be encouraged, you know, from time to time, and of course also including the traditional rulers. We all know historically the role of traditional rulers, even in the political hierarchy of the country during the colonial eras, through to the Clifford Constitution and all that. We know how they were also given appropriate recognition, perhaps until we started the road to a Republican Constitution, where they were denuded of power. The traditional ruler still has roles. They have roles to play, you know, in our political environment, either we like it or not, because they are still centers of powers wherever they are, you know, because the office, as it were, I mean, that traditional office is by consensus, and when you have an office by consensus, it means there's a locus of power, you know, in such office. So I think it's a good one, and it should not just be about a follow-up or an aftermath to issues of crisis. It should be a constant engagement, you know, a regular engagement, to first get across what government is doing, you know, and get feedback from the people. It is essential.
We will talk about, you know, the figures as far as you're concerned, because as Kingsley said, it's all about money and figures with you. But nonetheless, we'll talk about that and how this all played in this communication issue. Ibrahim Modibo, let's look at the communication thing. I've known you to be a communicator from day one to date, and of course that's your passion, and you've been on it truly, perfectly and excellently. The NSAS thing started generally with, as a result of breaking communication, I must say, breaking communication between the youths and the leaders, the governed and the government and the rest of them. Had there been proper communication, it couldn't have reached that level. So also at the fallouts of the NSAS protest, following the, you know, the lootings and the rest of them, all these were as a result of lack of communication. Thank God. The government and the people have understood this and set in motion this communication mechanism through the ministers for a start, I believe, and things are moving on. How would you assess this initiative?
Thank you very much. This wonderful panel of distinguished personalities are here this morning. Using any parameter of democratic practice, it is a normal thing in a normal democratic setting to have a feedback communication kind of. There should be a channel of communication between the government and the governed. Now, the formation of this foresight by this government is not only timely, but it is most appropriate at this point in time, bearing in mind that we've just been able to get out of a crisis period. But to me, ab initio, there should have been this communication linkages between the political class and the masses. There should be a kind of two-way traffic. I was thinking that with the basic principles of this government, knowing full well the beautiful programs of action that this government came in with, I was thinking right from day one, there should have been a mechanism where there will be feedback to government, the way people feel about government, and the way also government responds to the yearnings and aspirations of Nigerians. But unfortunately, this has not been done. We shouldn't wait till there is a crisis period before we embark on fire brigade approach to communication. What should have been done right from day one? Because if you look at the architecture, the communication architecture of this government, you'll find out that apart from the NTA, the radio stations and what have you, they are always there to propagate or propel the activities of governance. There are some television stations that are even antithetical to the problems of government. They don't even bother. All they need is to stand in as opposition, kind of opposition media communication outfits. Now, in my own line of thinking, I was thinking right from day one, the National Orientation Agency should have been fully funded to pick up the gauntlet and look at the issues dispassionately when it comes to government policies and programs. Very sound policies. Look at the economy, the issue of when the president came in, he was talking about revamping the economy, providing social infrastructure, fighting terrorism, and also taking on corruption head on. These are fundamental issues. And also looking at even the electoral system. The government had wanted to lay a solid and very fundamental base for perfect electoral system where the vote counts. And I think the government has been succeeding towards this direction. In the days gone by, people will just sit under trees and then award votes and this, and then they'll start jubilating. They'll start dancing and they won. But this is a time now where the vote counts, where we've seen the major political party or the party in government is losing gallantly elections in this country. Never in the history of Nigeria has this thing happened. What I was thinking of, these government officials should have been mobilized to work in tandem with the NTA, the radio stations, as well as the National Orientation Agency to be fully funded, to be talking to Nigerians, especially once in a quarter. It doesn't take anything from ministers and all these advisors and what have you. Go back to your people. Get a feedback mechanism. If it's possible, operate an office within your states because you are the representative of your states. You should have a feedback mechanism where you talk to people and the people will respond to you. Or if they have their problems, they could also come to you and give you issues pertaining them or issues confronting the communities so that the government could be able to meet the aspirations of the people. But unfortunately, this has not happened. Now, this is an era of this social media, and that is the danger of communication that we have. Anybody that has a pen, has a tape recorder or a phone, can just be a journalist. No training, nothing. No ethics and etiquette of the profession. By virtue of professional ethics and etiquette, and also the standard of journalism, you must abide by the basic principles of social responsibility theory. It presupposes that if you're writing a story, is it factual? Did you meet all the parameters of balance, of fairness, of thoroughness? All these things count when it comes to communication. But the social media opens a wider forum, an enviable latitude, where brigands, where hooligans will come in and just start writing anything and people will come and take it hook, line, and sinker. That is the most unfortunate and that is the most dangerous thing that has happened to the media space. The media space has been occupied by charlatans. You find out that people will just come and start picking stories from Kenya, Tanzania, and what have you, and come and mix it because they're all blacks. They will say this is Nigeria. And unfortunately, people come to take it. I was just listening to the interactive session that Governor Wike had with the Igbo community in Port Harcourt about 2-3 days ago. Unfortunately, when he started talking to them on the danger associated with this IPOB and what have you, they came to understand the basic truth. And most of them said, look, we were having different feelings before coming here. But unfortunately now, the way you spoke to us, we've been able to understand the true position of things. So you see, the danger of social media is very, very paramount of fundamental importance. The dangers are they are better imagined than experienced, because these are people that will just go and try to create confusion, to bring government to ridicule, to also bring anarchy. Because if there's no immediate response, especially by the apparatuses of government, especially by ministers, advisors, I'm happy that one of the advisors is here, my brother, whom I've been seeing every time, doing very well in the National Assembly. They have not been able to have these linkages. They have been able to, there's a kind of a gap between the government and the governed.
Yeah, well, Ibrahim Bodibo, thanks a lot for the points, number of them that you have raised. At the beginning of your contribution, you tended to blame the incumbent administration for not deploying effective communication strategies for its business. But clearly, I mean, if you were to interrogate the issues deeper, you would find that these are problems that have accumulated over the decades. And that's why I want to bring in Senator Ita Enag. We all know that, look, the trigger for all of this was the rise of that very critical category of our population, namely the youth. Assuming there were no harsh end-SARS protests spearheaded by the youth, we might not have been in a position to have this opportunity of saying, oh, look, let's have these correct linkages. But to avoid it in future, that's to say going forward, from your own experience, how did we get to drift so far apart from the people, so that while there were rumblings, it's like a volcanic eruption? I mean, you're having the animal movements and nobody's paying attention. All of a sudden, you have the magma spilling out from the vortex of the volcano. What happened in your view?
Thank you very much. Let me appreciate you, because you still have a good grasp of your geography. Thank you very much. How did we get here? How did we wait for it to get into a volcanic eruption? It's a very long story. It didn't start with this administration. It started with the democracy, and it started with our system. But please let me just conclude one matter that Modibo, my friend, had raised about not following through. I mean, the non-communicating earlier. And I think he seemed to have been said that the engagement that we've had with the ministers have had has not been followed through. I want to at least say that after the ministers and the political leaders in each state went and came back, they submitted the report to Mr. President, and it was synthesized. And after that, Mr. President mandated the chief of staff to lead delegations to zones. And I'm sure we've seen the delegation they had to the southeast and other areas, and they met with the governors, met with the traditional institutions, met with other persons, and that is still communicating and relating at different strata or layers of it. And this is what is done by President Buhari to tell and show the people that he cares. And what we've done as a government, I want to say, what the government has done, the federal government of President Buhari, is to show the people that we are not your masters. We are your servants. We will not call you to Abuja and come and tell you what is wrong. We will come down to your villages, homes, and hamlets and tell you we hear your concerns and we are addressing them. Now, how did we get to where we are? I think we ignored a certain segment of the society. We kept sending our children to school, and they came back. We didn't care whether they had jobs. We kept repeating to children that you are the leaders of tomorrow. And I keep telling them that tomorrow we told you yesterday is today. And they know that it is today. We kept giving children exposure without engaging their hands in what to do. We kept giving them a lot of ideas and knowledge without giving them space to play. We kept sending them to different schools without planning strategically, when you come back, what will you do? We kept giving people opportunities in the public service without, when it is time, they will say that they want to extend their tenure, or not their tenure, their age of service. They would want to extend from 60 to 65, from 65 to 70. They won't retire to get. When you give them opportunities, people will go on strike, not thinking of the children here. What we had is a combustion from a lot of energies concentrated in a space which was bigger, greater, hotter, and more tempered than the space available. Now, what we've had is a situation where our children, our young ones, have born long enough. A situation where there is so much suffering on the ground, yet some persons in authority, in some strata, appear as if it does not matter. This is how we got here. A situation where you have your children from the universities. These are the hottest and the most potential volcanic elements in our society. You kept them away from school for close to almost a year, or close to a year. Yes, there was the ASU strike. It ought to have been resolved. Whenever the corona gave us a window, we ought to have taken that window and sent back these children to school. So we need to take action to show that we care for these persons. And how do we take action to show that we care for these persons? One, we will have to ensure that we make provision for employment. Not just employment of these children who are coming out of school, even their parents, how they earn a living. We have to be concerned about how a table is set in each house, how somebody is able to go to, parents are able to send their children to school. We have to be concerned about security. We have to be concerned even about the police. We've heard that the whole issue started with the NSAS and the police protest. But I think that people, we've taken that the police issue is sorted, is given, and now it is now social. We have to think about the social system, the security system, and we have to think about the security system and the social security system. What I mean by the security system is, I wish we'll have time to dissect this, is that the police appears to be taken as the most abused great-grandmother.
Senator.
So if we have all those areas addressed, we would have addressed all the issues that led us to where we are now. But one thing I want to appreciate in conclusion is that the government has not said, get out. The government has not taken it for granted. For once, the governments of the respective states have stood up. They are not now pointing fingers at Abuja because it is affecting everybody. There is no political party difference in this matter. Everybody has sung together under the leadership of President Buhari, so we are going to get it right.
It's all about, I was just trying to interject a little in order to see to it that you can still expatiate on something you raised. Earlier on, at the beginning of this program, you said you met women, you met traditional rulers, you met lecturers, you met the youths, and all strata of the society. They talk to you, you talk to them. And you had something you came with to Abuja, they had something they took away from you. At the center of this are the youths.
Yeah.
When you talk to them, when you met them, when they were talking to you and looking into your eyes, and you did the same, what did you see in their eyes? Did you see some sort of frustration that doesn't seem to go away so easily, even with this intervention? Or do you see a kind of hope in what you've told them as they assimilated?
I want to say that at the time we walked into the arena, we saw tension with our eyes. We felt it. The level of heat, tension, anger you could slice it as a cake. So it wasn't a rosy day for us. Yeah. But yet, when you take responsibility as governor in government, it is being in government is like taking the bullet meant for the people. So you have to, because you are engaged on their behalf. Therefore, we engaged with them. They spoke so frankly. They spoke with anger. They spoke with frustration. This is a public forum. This is a public forum. And I will not say, oh, they were smiling. They were not smiling. Oh.
They shouldn't.
They felt they engaged us and eyeball to eyeball. Mm-hmm. There was no sir about it. There was no distinguished senator. They talked to me and the honorable minister and the entire district and said, take this to the president. And we were happy. But at the end of it, they appreciated that we have come down. You know, they appreciated that we have explanations for them. Although the explanations were not easily acceptable, you know, because what the people want to know is not how much and what have you done. It is what is the result of what you have done to my table in the morning, to my child's school fees. Where do I go out to work daily? How do I engage my hands? I don't want to beg you again. I don't want to beg for money. I don't want your fish. I want to be able to fish, you know. I have my mother to take care of. I have my parents to take care of. I have graduated. People no more give me money. They now have learned to call me uncle. I have finished NYC. They now call me uncle, and I'm expected to behave like uncle, which they call me. But I haven't got a job to do. So what we made them appreciate is, what we make them understand is that there are so many government programs, that we're working on oil alternative economy, that we're working on agriculture. We show them the roadmap, what the president is doing. We also drew their attention that more of the things they're complaining about, the solution lies with the government of the state. We also drew their attention that much of the things they're talking about is domiciled in the local government. We also draw the attention to how much, to funds that are coming to the local government, each local government, funds that are coming to the state. And I think that is creating a different thinking now, because they have appreciated the difference between the functions of the federal government and that of the state government, and they are now taking the hit onto the state government.
Right. Thank you very much, Senator Enang. Let's bring you again into the conversation. One of the points that Senator Enang made, and of course that's fairly obvious, but it needs restating, that this is not a business of the federal government that we are dealing with, because anybody who witnessed the consequences of the hijack of the EndSARS protests would know that both private individuals, private businesses, government structures and institutions were all impacted when things went haywire. The warehouses that were looted included both private and public warehouses. But in terms of having a better appreciation of saying, look, these are the things that we need to take cognizance of going forward. What do you think are the immediate lessons, if not future lessons, to learn from all of this, and therefore be in a position to harmonize our workable remedies, as well as having, shall we say, a more welfare system that caters to the needs of these persons, so that they are also stakeholders and will say, look, listen, if I have my bread on my table and I'm sure of it tomorrow, I shouldn't bring down the house.
Definitely. I think what is obvious is that over the last so many years, and I'm talking of years even before 1999, there had been a sort of delinkage of the office of the citizen from governance. That's the truth. The first poverty head count in Nigeria was done sometimes in, I think, 1985. And the result was 13 million Nigerians living under $1. By 2010, NBS did the poverty head count again. Before 2010, they've done, but the highest figure was 112 million Nigerians living under $1 a day. Now, when you look at it between 1985 to 2010, 13 million to 112 million, it shows obviously that there had been a continuous marginalization and diminishing of livelihood for the average Nigerian. Well, thankfully, it's reducing now. The latest figure is 79 million, the 2018 figure. So it shows that there are activities and policies being implemented in that regard. But when an individual in the States lives under $1 a day, it's a clear case of dehumanization. That person is no longer a human being because he is not feeding well, he's not sure of where his next food will come from. And he has become basically a feeding person. His life and the life of his household cannot go beyond looking for what to eat. So it's limited by not just economic situation, now by social circumstances. He cannot even interact in the community, He cannot develop his, and I'm talking where the person is masculine now, he cannot develop his household, It affects the wife, the mother in the house and all that. So to a large extent, you have this crowd we are talking about aggregating into what you call unemployment, under unemployment, as the last figure is about 55% of unemployed and underemployed Nigerians. What it tells you is that these are non-economic agents. And as non-economic agents, it means that they don't have a stake, in what is happening in the country. Because they are not sure of where the next income will come. Your income is what you use to feed. Your income is what you use to transport yourself from one point to the other. And of course, your income is what ensures your social standing in the community. And once you lack that social standing, you have been dehumanized as a person. Well, nobody would point to this government as being responsible for this. It's an accumulation of what I call irresponsible governance over the last so many years. Because the truth is that if this government is doing so much, and we can see the reflection, if we are talking figures, we are talking 79 million from 112 million now, and it's not even under $1 now because the benchmark had moved from $1 to $1.9, $1.90 now. So if they had used 1.9 cents that other time, perhaps the whole of the country will be living virtually under poverty line. So going forward, I think the important thing is first, because I know that the federal government has rolled out so many programs. But unfortunately, there's still no linkage of those programs to the desired stakeholders. There's a need for targeted communication to get the people, especially the youth, the younger generation, to know that these activities are ongoing. And most importantly, there's even the need for a reorientation. There's an assumption that when government is doing something, it's only for the big men, and that when the policy is rolled out for the purpose of the poor man self, it is the person that knows somebody that would be able, to benefit from it. So there is a need for that reorientation, to create the fact of equity, in the public space. Going forward, is a large ecosystem in terms of our mystery index. It affects virtually every aspect of our national existence. But the good thing is that there are so many programs now. Are we talking of the programs as encapsulated in the economic stimulus plan? The last count for me was about 35 programs targeted at different aspects and population of the people. Before then, we've had the 5 strong pillars of the National Social Investment Program, the Empower, the cash transfer, and all the JIP, the traders' money, farmers' money, and all that. Those, for me, are actually good foundation. Now, with what we have with the economic stimulus program, if it's proper, if they are properly targeted, it will start solving the problem. The problem in Nigeria cannot be solved by just switching a switch. It's a more than 40 years accumulated problem. At least it will take a minimum 10 years, to start resolving this. And I think there is a need to start that deliberate communication that is not, usually the tendency is to use media-mediated communication. It is this kind of touch-based, interactive, interpersonal communication that is important because they can see your eyes as you are talking. The average man and woman can know if this person is telling the lie or is just trying to, to paper things when you have that kind of communication. And when you go sell this kind of information to the people, they are more, assured that there's a person they can relate with. When you are saying there's a program like Accelerated Agricultural Development Program that you can benefit from, the central bank is taking up the risk to the tune of 50%. This is what you don't need anything. In fact, the states are going to provide between 20,000 hectares and 100,000 hectares of land, and it will be made available to people like you. There is a program like this. You don't need anything. Go to the bank. This is that bank, that NISA bank. It is this place, in this state. Go there, approach them, talk to them. You can have 50,000. You can have 100,000, but this is how you are going to pay. And so this 30,000 naira thing that is being, the guaranteed 30,000 naira that is being given to people, we should talk more about it. So people that are not even collecting it would find comfort in the fact that some other people are collecting, and it means that government is actually doing things and it's touching base.
Well, that's a good one, Nia Akinsuju. It seems you've touched on so many issues here, talking about communication basically, because the whole issue boils down to communication now. And that what prompts me to move over to Ibrahim Modibo as a communicator and a communication expert. The gap has been established that there is much more to be done as far as communication is concerned. And the government has a lot to do in addition to the much it has done. And that's talking about the so many programs it has put in place, which really could not be properly, projected to those targeted areas, as Nia said. As a communicator, Ibrahim Modibo, could you please advise us and advise the government and tell us exactly what needs to be done differently now in order to see to it that these issues and these programs and projects reach the targeted people?
Thank you very much. Before I go to that question, let me correct an impression, which my very good friend Kingsley has decided to put that toga on my neck. That I am blaming the government. No. You see,
I said you tended to.
Yes, well, whatever it is, it gives me the color, because whatever language you use as a lawyer, it gives me that communication, breakthrough that I am blaming the government. No. All I'm saying is that when we are discussing issues like this, there's no need for window dressing. We must tell the government the truth. In whatever circumstance we find ourselves, let us be guided by the truth, and also feel that history beckons on us that tomorrow we might be judged by our conscience and by what we say. And that is why when I came up here, I stated clearly as a communicator that there are problems. These problems could not be said to be insurmountable. There are problems that could be surmountable. We have to tell the government the truth. Where it is lacking in foresight, we should tell it. And where it is done well, we should also appreciate the dynamics of the government. Now, going back to that question. You see, as a communicator, I've talked severally on these issues that tries to bring a serious impediment to our development as a nation under a liberal democracy. Using every parameter of democratic governance, and also looking at the issues of these issues, especially confronting us today in Nigeria, you see, one, the government has sound policies. We cannot blame this government for all these problems because these problems have been accumulated problems over a long time. Nigeria, for a very long time, has been buckled under the full weight of ravenous and greedy political class that have not been able to be in sync and in rhyme with the current trend of events, where we've seen unemployment opportunities, unemployment, you see youth unengagement. If we know that Nigeria today, the youth spend over 65% of their time on social media. Check it. They are always on phone, communicating, 65%. And therefore, this is by statistics. Therefore, if we know that these youth have this engagement, what do? The answer is simple. Let us try to see how we could be able to mobilize and aggregate our youths towards fashioning their minds towards social media. Today, Mark Zuckerberg is a comfortable multi-billionaire courtesy of social media. Singapore does not have oil, it doesn't have land, it doesn't have water, it doesn't have anything but science and technology, social media. Today, Singapore is one of the highest countries that have the greatest per capita income in the world. Mr. Nia Kisunju is a great economist, he can testify to that. Now, what do we need to do? Let us try to see how we could fashion our youthful this thing towards productive venture rather than destructive venture. Because this kind of social media that we have, these linkages, today is trying to be a destructive one. And I think we should look beyond the bounds of, engage them in unproductive into productive ones. And secondly, I want to say that this government should sit and think about this engagement of youth when it comes to employment opportunities. Honestly and sincerely, I'm so sad that you see a graduate will finish university for 10, 15 years without having a job. In the days gone by, when I graduated, I knew, over 35, 40 years ago, I knew the first day when I went to seek for employment, I got it. But you see, young people now finishing universities, they will spend 10, 15 years still getting monies from their fathers and their mothers, still eating food from the plates, handouts from their parents. It's a very unfortunate and sad situation. That is why a very docile mind is a very dangerous mind towards the development structure of a country. So I want to believe that we have to think and then make positive impact. Looking at this government today, as distinguished Senator NTA has rightly stated, it has sound policies and sound programs. I am one of those that are in sync and feel very proud to be associated with this government in terms of its policies and programs. It has sound policies and sound programs. Unlike in those days when we had some political parties that formed government in this country where they were not bothered about this thing, but they formed a kind of rainbow coalition of strange political bedfellows that came to under a same table to share and chop. But this is a different thing. Now, the monies and the looting is not going as it used to be. I'm not saying that there's no looting here now, again, no, I'm not saying that. But it's not as before, where we find people looting just for their selfish ends. If you loot now, you know that if they catch you, you'll be in trouble. So therefore, this government in its magnanimity has been trying to do well. But there are also operatives within the system that have been in sync and in tune with what has been happening before. So it is just like, old wines in new bottles. This perception is what President Muhammadu Buhari is out to change. And therefore, I am happy to associate myself, and I think as a communicator, there should be a line of communication between the government and the governed, where we find people, especially the government machineries. I'm not quarreling with the government. I'm not quarreling with President Muhammadu Buhari's government. No, but the operators, top government functionaries should not be sitting in the comfort of their offices to wait for feedbacks. They must be at the villages. They must go to the towns, city squares, village squares, and also town halls to make sure that at least if it is once in a quarter or once in 6 months, this should have started right from the dawn of history when President Muhammad Buhari came in, the last 4 years. If this had been done, maybe this government would have been able to appreciate the demands and dynamics of operational democracy, while we'll find feedback between the government and the governed, while the government will also be able to propel some of these things for the greater productivity and for greater advancement of this for Nigerians. So I want to appeal to this government. It must, first and foremost, be able to educate Nigerians very well. Provide necessary funding to all these megaphones of government, the NTA, all these people, and also make sure that the National Orientation Agency works. Because today, the National Orientation Agency seems to be like a toothless bulldog that barks but never bites. It is there in nomenclature, but I've not been able to feel the vibes. I've not been able to feel that impulsive strength of the National Orientation Agency. So I want the government to see to the possibilities of forming teams that will go and approach people in their areas, feel their pulses, report to government, and also make sure that Nigeria, the youth, should be fully engaged. That's why I was advocating that the ASU and the federal government, please should sit down and analyze these issues. Most of these strikes that you've seen, it is an intellectually based strike that started in a normal way, but it has been hijacked by hoodlums. Most of those that operated there were university graduates or those that have finished. Let them go back to school. If they are going back to school, let the lecturer and professors engage them with assignments. Give them 10, 15 assignments. They will be able to sit down and get themselves this thing. But now they are idle. An idle mind is the devil's workshop. Sure. Whether we like it or not, we must, as a matter of urgency, resolve this issue. Let these students go back to school and let normalcy come to Nigeria. May every stumbling block be turned into stepping stone for greater heights for this country. I pray.
All right. Ibrahim Modibo, thank you very much there for your submission and indeed for your prayers. To all that, I'm sure we will say amen. Gentlemen, we are watching Good Morning Nigeria live on NTA's network service. We're taking a short break now. When we return, of course, we'll continue with the conversation and also take the tweets that have come in from our viewers.
The Council of Our Fathers.
I believe we have fought one civil war too many in this country. So those who experience it will run away from it.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation together.
My name is Nando Jamda Muhammad.
Stevita.
Hussein Musa. Roduna Joel Chinji. Said Musa John. I'm a carpenter. I've been doing this for more than 8 years now.
And I said that plantain. Nakai Kimami Shekara Uku. I've been selling my tomatoes for about 10 years now, and I do it for a better Nigeria.
And I do it for a better Nigeria.
And you can see we are doing our small little work to make Nigeria great.
As you can see, I'm a technician and I'm doing it to help myself and to help my generation.
Business.
This message is from the National Orientation Agency. Dialogue, empathy, love, and unity. These are vital components of nation building.
For all to be well, we appeal that we should refrain from volatile, provocative, inciting messages and language.
Let's build and not destroy.
Before the break, there was a very big prayer there from Ibrahim Modibo, and that's talking about in the stumbling block in the wheels of progress of this country, that God take it away. I think all of us should say amen to that. The discussion is on NSAS and then the constituency visits and the motives arising out of that, and we've really talked much about that, and we'll keep talking about it for the remaining 30 minutes or so. But before we do that, Nigerians have reacted to this discussion this morning through tweets. I think we have a couple of them here. We'll go through them with Kinsley now. Getting started with Festus Akimboyewa, who says we need our ministers to do more in public engagement in order to boost trust and improve the flow of information between the public and the government.
Chris Simeon, or Leo Fadaka, says with the involvement of community volunteer monitors, abandoned projects will be minimized and constituency will be the better for it.
And Dele Jackson Solomon says the involvement of people monitoring the implementation of government projects in their communities can improve service delivery and reduce corruption. Citizens must start to engage their ministerial representatives, ministry or agency in charge of projects via letters, emails or tweets, report projects and monitor progress update, that is. And this is the only way to hold these ministers accountable in Nigeria.
Chris Simeon, many Nigerian youths are idle, not empowered in the different constituencies. This is because officials do not coordinate government's efforts in the interest of young people.
Mike Anyako says ministerial constituency engagements are very necessary, and that's what we've been talking about here. And though, unfortunately, it was initiated by PMB, that's President Muhammadu Buhari, instead of the ministers themselves, a lot of them alienated themselves from their people, but only to surface during elections to fight with party leaders to impose candidates.
And Steve Bond, 007, that's Stephen, comparing the peaceful protesters with terrorists is not a good start to discussions. Politicians are living in denial, and history won't forget their stance.
Omo Bolahan Barb says leadership across all levels, federal, state, and local governments, going forward must take the issue of governance very seriously. Governance is nothing but visible derivables of democratic dividends, mechanisms that ensure monies are put in the hands of the common man and be put in the hands of those who are concerned and who will do the job.
All right, Jibril Salisu Naina says the interaction of a minister, I suggest, should not be alone in his or her constituency. Let it be countrywide, as it will create more awareness of other ministries, their functions and achievements so far. That says the minister may not be from that state, and it would also create more acceptability.
Abba Salihu Abdullah says political leaders' engagement, better late than never, that is, they should do more vigorously. Because of this, the federal government of Nigeria is doing much with the very little it has, but it was not communicated well and consistently.
Dele Jack Solomon, there's the last one we'll take from him. It says an effective response to this crisis should start with political leaders and security officers acknowledging that an important cause for the surge of all forms of violent extremism in Nigeria is leadership, and you should now see the popular demands for accounting, that's our accountability and responsibility. So those are the tweets we'll take in the meantime. I just want to come back to distinguished Senator Itaina, and of course the other guests who can also listen into this question. This is not a time for buck passing. Everybody's involved and everybody has seen. It's been a rude awakening, as it were, to the kind of crisis that we have on our hands if we do not deal with it. But the responses that we are discussing at the moment, are from the executive branch of government. Now, we also would ask ourselves, the first estate, which is the legislature, from time to time, we do hear lawmakers say, oh, they represent the people, which is true, that they are closest to the people, which is true, that they have the interests of the people at heart, which is also true. You were in the House of Reps. You were also in the Senate. I'm not going to ask you why communication or interaction with constituents did not dredge up these feelings of abandonment and despair from amongst this critical category to avoid and avert what happened. That's to say that resulted in the SARS protest. What can be done much more effectively now, utilizing that realm of the estate, which is to say the legislators, to truly interface and also bring out its own ideas and suggestions and hope and aspiration, and indeed the fact that this is going to be a new order on account of the rude awakening?
Thank you very much. I want to say that, please, I hope we are going to discuss the legislature, not just the National Assembly, but the state legislature.
Absolutely. It's an open-ended question to you. Yes.
Now, I want to say that the National Assembly has done what it ought to do. It has consulted with the executive. It had met on its own. It has dispatched its different committees. The different committees have interacted with the ministers in respect of what they have done in respect of their ministries in solving the problem, in addressing the problem. I'm also aware that most of the senators and members of the House of Representatives have gone to their constituencies. So at the National Assembly level, they have done well. At the state level, I take responsibility, personal responsibility for what I'm going to say. I take responsibility. The state houses of assembly have been turned into parastatals by the governors of the respective states. I take responsibility. You cannot have 10% of the independence of the National Assembly at any state house of assembly, except perhaps Lagos State. Perhaps Lagos State, Plateau State, perhaps Kebbi State. The rest, a house of assembly is treated less than a ministry. So the legislators are not allowed to work. They are not given the tool. They are not even given, they have the voice, but they are not allowed to voice out. The governors behave, I apologize, I take responsibility, as emperors. The judiciary is not free under them. The legislature is not free under them. Mr. President set up a committee that, look, let's allow the legislature and the president to be free. And what was the president asking for? Simply treat the legislature in your state the way I treat the National Assembly. Treat the judiciary in your state the way I treat the federal judiciary. They have not allowed. So you can really, rarely ask the Houses of Assembly, what have you done? Now, the solution to this is not the question of what the legislature does or doesn't do. I commend the National Assembly. I commend the President of the Senate, the Speaker of the House, because they have been very responsive. They go for night meetings, night consultations with the President, with the Vice President. They summon the Inspector General of Police, the National Security Advisor, the Director General of the State Services and all security agencies. You know, they even summon the Army and say, what role did you play here? Temper your actions and take instructions. Now, they have done that at the federal level. At the state level, what we need to do, and I will urge His Excellency, Mr. President, and the Minister of Finance, that let us publish every week, every month, the amount of money that goes to every state, in every local newspaper, in every social media, and the amount of money that goes to every local government in that state. Because what happens is that whenever anything happens, the governors will point their fingers at Buhari in Abuja, and they say Abuja. They do not let the people know that they have collected money that is meant for them. So every problem, people are bound to see as if it were a unitary government, that the president is responsible up to the ward level. So let this be done so that the government, the citizens can take pressure down to the local government. The local government is supposed to engage some of these people in agriculture. They're supposed to engage them in even revenue collection. They're supposed to engage them in even public works. You know, all the programs that are being done well, social investment program, are done only by the federal government. You can't hear any state except Lagos, doing anything reasonable in terms of social investment. Mr. President is engaging through the Ministry of Labor and the National Director of Employment on the 774,000 citizens of public works. Meanwhile, the governors are struggling for those slots. He is engaging on programs on the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs. The governors will be the first to go and struggle to receive the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, collect all the slots. And even if you are not in the same political party, when they collect, they say, okay, that is APC largest to us as PDP government. They don't even involve any other person. It is only the PDP people. They use it to shine as if they are own. They will collect palliatives. They will keep it.
You are saying some of the governors.
Most of the governors, I wouldn't say some, most of the governors. They will, Now, so people they tend to feel as if every government is federal government is Buhari. So this is why I'm saying let everybody know. What I know, they publish in 1 or 2 papers, and they will publish some of those times in most states. Any paper that publishes their location or that comes to the state when the Minister of Finance publishes or Federation Account Allocation Committee, they go and buy up all those papers in that state. It is part of somebody has that brief so that nobody reads how much has come. So let's publish it and let everybody know. Because if you go to, and the worst situation is happening in states that have more money. The South, the states that collect derivation. When you see the National Bureau of Statistics, level of poverty, it is in those states. Level of unemployment, it is in those states. Level of debt owed, it is in those states. Crisis, it is in those states. So what we need to do is to make the people aware that what the federal that government is not only Buhari and the federal government, that every state government has its own money from the federal government. We're not even talking about what you are generating from your own, because that ones are some of those ones are used to fuel private jets, We're not even talking about what you are generating. We're talking about what the federal government has given to you. What have you done with that money for the people? So we now, as federal government, and even the citizens, have to be appraised and apprised that there is so much money that goes to every state government. So that let them not struggle for the federal government programs. Whenever we initiate a national program that, like the one that is handled by the Minister of Trade and Investment, the small and medium enterprises, like the one that is handling by Humanitarian Affairs, the one that is handled by the Minister of Women Affairs, the one is handled by the Minister of Labor. It is the governors that are struggling for this lot more. They appoint people to trap the program immediately it comes and become federal government program. And that is the one they will be talking about, not the one they haven't generated. So one of the things that should be done is, before you go for the federal government to intervene in some of these programs, let them ask for state participation. That is a kind of contributory thing, so that you can, so that every person will bring their money. Also, the same goes for local government finances.
Yeah, talking about local government finances, talking about the states, I think this is going to be a topic for another day, because it's really a broad one. Talking about the autonomy, the judiciary, the tenets of democracy, as it were. Now, I would want to stay a little bit with you briefly, because I have some few more minutes left on this program, and we must talk about this. Talking about, or looking at the issue of what really happened, and what you went and saw, and what you came back with to the federal government. Now, what are we expecting? Because the people you met were expecting something from you.
Yeah.
And for sure, they might have not given you a timeline for that, but they should be expecting something very soon as possible, as the tension is yet to be fully dosed, because the issues are still there. Now, when we look forward, what would they want to hear from you as a palliative to their own concerns when you left them?
Well, first, I think they will want to hear that on the actual NSAS problem, that there is a solution to the security problem. As at today, the morale of the police has been down, and they are not in most of the beats they ought to, but they usually are. And there's still some fear as to what the public is thinking. There is also the question of mistreatment or undertreatment of the police. Undertreatment, I won't say undertreatment of the police. When you consider what the civil defense earns, you consider what the SSS earns, you consider what the road safety and other paramilitary, compared to the police, not just the basic salary, but the way they are treated, compared to the work they do, the public will want to hear that we have something I will want to call harmonized security services, salary, emolument, allowances scale. That is that all these people are treated better because the police appears, in my personal opinion, to be the least well-treated amongst all this. I'm not comparing with them with the army, because their job is external defense. So that is what we will have to address, to take back to the people that we have addressed this situation and we have given back confidence to the police, so you can feel safe and secure in your place, and SARS is no more, and the security structure is taking care of you. Now, they also want to hear what we have done about solving the question of strikes, which has kept people at home. We are making available and everybody to know what the federal government has and the different obligations it has, that it is not only the workers at this level that it is taken care of, that it is not only federal government salaries that are taken care of. We just have another outbreak of possible strike on now by Pengasan, you know, and what is the question? They don't want to be on eyepiece. What is eyepiece? Let it be captured what you are earning. The fact that you work in NTA or you work in Ministry of Works doesn't mean that you are, unless you are inferior to somebody that works in NNPC or any of the oil companies. You are on eyepiece. Everybody should be on eyepiece. The fact that you are working academic staff or non-academic staff at university doesn't make you superior, or that you shouldn't obey the law, or you shouldn't pay. And we have to get this resolved. So what they want to hear from us is that we have resolved this and people are back to school, children are back to school, and the pressure is off. Excuse me. The other one they want to hear is that there is provisions for constructive engagement of hands, labor, children, graduates, non-graduates, even the students. Okay. Even when you are a student, there are many things you do to earn a living. They want to hear that the way their pension of their parents are paid, whether you work in local government, state government, or federal government, that you are paid your pensions and you survive. They want to hear that there are many opportunities in the public sector, in the private sector. They want to hear that we've taken action that will strengthen our naira, you know, and the currency, you know. They want to take action that will hear that they can be engaged in agriculture, so that we don't depend on mono economy to feed them, and that we are not going to import expired rice, or we are not going to use our foreign resources to import food, that they are here as hands, they can produce the food. So this is what they want to hear. Okay. And that is what His Excellency Mr. President has said. Chief of Staff, the ministers have come back. They have submitted their report. Synthesize it. Go around with the Commissioner, with the Inspector General of Police and other teams and the ministers. Meet back the governors and bring it back to us. That's where we are. And we are communicating it to them.
All right. Thank you very much, distinguished Senator Itai. Notable, while the guests were speaking, a thought occurred to me in terms of communication. Well, we talked about the inadequacy of current platforms being utilized. But one aspect, this is just food for thought. We don't have to dwell on it because we might not have enough time. I just would give the opportunity to the others. Let's say business communication. How many MDAs, that's to say ministries, departments, and agencies of government at all levels, federal, state, and local government, can you write a letter to, even if you are not a big man, and expect to get a reply? Hey, how many?
That is when you have a conscious, deliberate policy of humaneness in government. It has to be conscious, it has to be deliberate. Even if it's
I'm sorry to interject. So that as a young person, if I want to target, if I want to participate in the program and I have no idea or I'm misguided in my thinking XYZ, I address it to, say, the supervisory councillor of works or of health, local government XYZ, and I deliver the letter and I will get a reply.
And that even connects us to what Ibrahim Modibo said much earlier when he left school, as he looked back 40 years ago.
Practical reality.
It's a practical
thing. This breakdown, it's been something that's been on for decades. But
that's about 40, 45 years.
Absolutely.
All of us are just benefits
Absolutely.
of this. When we left school, we just came
let's
out
get
and
a closing
good
thoughts,
job.
yes.
All right?
Well, I think really it's about government at all levels understanding the essence of the office of the citizen. I think over a long time, a long period of time, the office of the citizen
thought about this program finally because of very limited time to do that.
The office of the citizen had been so diminished. If in the consideration of an occupier of a government office at the local government level, state government, at federal level, if in the consideration of such person, the office of the citizen is taken as an important office, when a communication, from that office is taken to the government official, it will be appropriately acknowledged. And the acknowledgement itself is of significance because it shows that there is a recognition of that office, that singular office, and it creates a stakeholder sentiments and mentality, which is very important, So I think going forward, that should actually be, even if it's an auto reply. The important thing is I sent a message somewhere, I got a reply. It creates linkage.
It gives it that sense of belonging.
Sense of belonging.
It's
a stakeholder's mentality that
that's
it
a
creates.
Great one, really. Ibrahim Modibo, finally, in 30 seconds, what would you say about this?
Well, we've said it all. And Nigeria has come out of this current crisis, and we hope there won't be anyone again, maybe in the next 100 years. Having stated this, things have been moving from the sublime to the ridiculous, where mediocrity and iniquity ruled. But now is a period of change. The change presupposes that we are in a regime that is trying to bring a positive impact towards the developmental structure of this country.
Okay.
Therefore, we believe communication is very effective, and therefore, as this government, although it is better late than never, communication is very central for any. It's just like winking in the darkness.
Well, thank you so much, Ibrahim Modibo, really. At least as a communicator, we keep talking and keep talking, and I'll give you the time. Thank you. It's our pleasure we've been part of this morning.
There is the Freedom of Information Act,
which
compels a response to any inquiry by a citizen on any matter. And if you send a letter making inquiry and does not respond, you go under the Freedom of Information Act and compel a response.
That's a great one.
Some states have argued that the act is not domiciled in their jurisdiction.
It's all right. Now, we thank you so much, Ibrahim Modibo. We thank you so much, Ni Akin Seju, and of course, the distinguished senator. It's our pleasure being part of it this morning.
Thank you very much.
Your insights have been very fruitful, and of course, we thank you for that. I am Yusuf Nadabo Suman. That was Good Morning Nigeria today. Join us tomorrow for another package.
And I'm Kingsley Osadolado. Have a lovely day ahead.